Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Free Thought Blogs, FtBCon3. The time is 3 p.m. Central, and you're watching the People of Color Beyond Faith and Moving Social Justice Forward panel. To participate in the live Q&A, visit the Ferengula chat room at tinyurl.com/FtBcon. The host for this panel is Kimberly Veal, and I'll let her take over and lead the introductions for the other panelists. So enjoy. Hang on.
Well, thank you so very much. Welcome, everybody, to the Free Thought Blog Digital Conference. We appreciate you all for joining us today. We are People of Color Beyond Faith, and we have Donald Wright with us. Donald Wright is one of the co-founders of Houston Black Nonbelievers, and he also wrote the book, The Only Prayer I'll Ever Pray Is Let My People Go. Hi, Donald.
Well, hello, Kim.
Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes,
Looking
sir.
forward to a great conversation, as we normally do.
Exactly. And our next panelist would be Raina Rhodes. She is a blogger on Roads to Reality. She is also a co-host.
A blogger. I'm the only blogger.
Well, welcome, Raina, the one and only. Exactly.
The only one. Yeah.
So we welcome you. The next panelist would be Jennifer Taylor, and she should be back with us shortly, but she is the organizer for Black Atheists of Philadelphia, so we will be giving her a hearty welcome back when she comes, when she basically comes back into the conference here. So, you know, we appreciate you all for joining us today. And we wanted to talk a little bit about People of Color Beyond Faith so that you all will know who we are, what we're trying to achieve, our mission, and what we've been able to accomplish so far and what we want to accomplish. So, Donald, can you please enlighten our viewing audience as to People of Color Beyond Faith? What is our concept and where are we trying to go?
Yeah, I guess it's been a little over a year now when the idea came up, and I know when I was first approached about it from Kim and Raina and Sakivu, and I was a little bit reluctant regarding what would be the benefit of another movement or organization or campaign in terms of how we're going to expand this into the secular movement. But once we talked about it and identified the void that was being left out of the secular movement, and particularly around the conversation of social justice, I quickly realized that this is what we needed to do. And also in the conversation too, the secular movement is still very shallow or minimum in terms of people of color in the presence of in the secular movement. So this could also be a way in which that can be utilized to encourage more visibility of people of color, particularly black people in the secular movement here in the United States. So as we got together to speak a little bit more about this and what we really trying to accomplish it was to focus in on encouraging the message of social justice, and so that's the major focus of the campaign, to provide a constant the more of an aggressive, consistent conversation surrounded around the message of social justice, and I'm so excited to be involved in it. And I know it seems to me that it's making a difference, just the conversation in itself. So over the year and a half, this has been great to be involved in.
Excellent, Donald. Thank you so much. Raina, what would be your take on people of color and what we've been able to accomplish in this community?
Oh, well, I'm so glad that we started this. Started out as an idea that Kim and I batted around, and then we presented to Sakiru, and then, we presented to Donald, and, I've just been so proud of everything that we've been able to accomplish over the last year. Um, I feel like if if we haven't accomplished anything else, we've definitely opened some people's eyes and expanded some people's perspectives on just what sorts of things secular groups or the secular community should be focused on. Um, it's been a real pleasure to see like people come to me and tell me like I didn't think about that before and I learned that thing because of your conference or your webcast. So that's been really great. The conference was amazing. Just some of the things and the ideas that we've come up with since the conference, the people that we engaged with, the causes that we've been able to highlight. Being a part of that has just been really rewarding. So I've enjoyed it.
Excellent, excellent. When Jen comes back, I will ask her to expound on, a couple of things that we talked about. But most importantly, I feel that with this project, with the People of Color Beyond Faith, we have been able to open the dialogue. We have been able to stimulate conversations. We have been able to encourage people to broaden their horizons, if you will, and look at things with a more critical eye, especially in in talking about social justice and the needs of the community. And so, like I said, when Jen comes back, we'll hit on that a little bit more. But during the conference, we had some very lively and interesting conversations, and we're so looking forward to the conference this year, which will take place in October at Rice University. And Jen, thanks for joining us here. I just wanted to ask you if you would like to speak about the conversations that have been stimulated by People of Color Beyond Faith, the different articles that have been presented by Dr. Hutchinson, Dr. Penn. How has that affected you, the conversations?
Okay, well,
Yeah, so, well, she'll come
technical
back and
difficulties, guys. Technical
yeah.
difficulties.
I know when Jen and I have talked before, she was just saying that, you know, uh, the webcast as well as the articles and the conference, it has opened up a lot of people's minds and broadened their horizons, and the conversations that have come forth, how they've been very productive. And there are people out there who definitely want to know more, and they're introspecting and trying to make sure that they're not making, humanists or atheists of color feel out of sorts. And so, it seems as though people are trying to be more welcoming in their environments. And so that's always a good conversation to have.
Mm-hmm.
So, Donald, let me ask you a question here. The conference last October, what was your overall feeling of the conference?
Well, the conference in itself was basically overwhelming because we were with the campaign. We're just trying to get this new conversation started, and the idea of the conference was was incredible. I mean, it was really awesome based on the fact that we really didn't know what the attendance was going to be like, what the reception was going to be like, and everything was overwhelming. I was really surprised by the attendance and people coming from across the country, and being able to invigorate the conversations around a lot of different topics that you don't hear very often in the secular movement. And so the conference in itself was I think was very enlightening for a lot of people, and plus the opportunity to meet a lot of new people and have a chance to really to develop some relationships and um, to meet some people that you kind of have met online and to develop a person-to-person connection with was really awesome to be able to do that. Um, I think one of the things that was very encouraging to me was the amount of young people that was there.
Right.
So we're talking about college students, and and to have conversation with them and to hear what their interests are, and then to still meet people that still have this trouble about coming out about their non-belief. It's still very intriguing to have to help people and talk to people as they try to maneuver around this religious thing. So I'm always kind of overwhelmed to have that opportunity to talk to people about that transition. So those were just some of the highlights for me with the conference, and it's all it's doing is setting the foundation for what we can do in the future. So the conference here in Houston, I'm definitely excited about.
Exactly, exactly. And we can't wait to get there, and it's going to be awesome, absolutely awesome. You know, we're working on some plans in the background, and we're still working a few things out, but we're telling you guys, don't miss out. Do not miss out.
Yeah,
You want to be there. You definitely want to be there because it felt like a big family reunion. And it was diverse. We had a number of different people from a number of, different sectors of life, if you will. Raina, what were your overall feelings about the conference?
Um, I mean, like Donald said, it was really overwhelming in a way, because I mean, I knew it was going to be great, but I didn't know it was going to be that great, and I didn't know that the attendance was going to be what it ended up being. I mean, we had people we'd never seen before, never heard of before, people who, just caught wind of it on our podcast,
Yeah.
you know, or might have caught wind of it because of a Twitter chat, and they're not even believers. Like non-believers, a lot of them, were not really sure where they fit in. So that was kind of nice to see, and just it was just really great. It was a great atmosphere, and there was it seemed like everyone there who was there was genuinely open and trying to learn something new, to take back with them. So that was really nice.
Excellent, excellent. Jen, are you there, Jen? Jen, unmute yourself, Jen. All right. Well, let me tell you all what I thought about the conference. It definitely, I agree with Donald and Raina both. It was overwhelming, and there were a couple of times that Raina had come in there and she would see me sitting in the corner because I had a designated seat there in the back because I was just trying to kind of measure
yeah.
the overall feeling and the overall audience and the overall attendees that were there, and I was just sitting there, and like I told Donald, Raina, Dr. Hutchinson, I was just taking in the magnitude of what we were able to accomplish, and that this was just the beginning, and I was looking more to the future, like where will we be 3 years from now, where will we be 3 years from now, where will we be 5 years from now, and how what type of impact that would have on the community, and I only see it getting bigger and better, being able to go out here and provide services for people, encouraging other people, like for the Day of Solidarity for Black Non-Believers, which takes place the last Sunday in February every year. We encourage people, you can get together, you can have coffee or dinner, and in some cases, some people want to make it a day of service, which is great too. We just want people to go offline and to meet one another, and that's also one of the purposes for the conference. We want to meet you. We want to see you, even though we'll have a DVD available for you guys to purchase. Being there, just the total experience of it, we will tell you, don't miss out. Do not miss out on this. So, we get excited about it. just thinking about it. But so, let me start with Raina this time. Raina, um, what do you believe most people walked away from the conference with? What do you believe impacted people the most?
What impacted people the most? It's hard to say. I mean, there were just so many things. But I think one of the things that really came across, and maybe this is just because the conference came after, after the summer and after the experiences that we have had in this country, watching what happened in Ferguson and watching, what had happened with Trayvon Martin and all of these other things just the previous year.
All
We
right, I
lost
think
Raina.
I think we lost Raina, but we're just gonna, Jen, are you there? Can you hear us? So Donald,
Yeah.
basically, Raina was talking about Ferguson and the protests and the riots and how all of that started, before we had the conference, and of course it was taking place then and subsequently. So I just wanted to ask, what role do you think that we as people of color beyond faith will play in this, possible new phase of civil rights movement happening in this country?
Well, it's such a great opportunity. I mean, even before the Trayvon and situation with all of these police shootings and particularly the Ferguson event and all that, the movement, the secular movement, has been invigorated, and I can't put my finger on exactly why that's happening, but I'm excited about it that is taking place, and I'm certainly excited about the fact. Excited ain't the word anymore for me. I'm so overwhelmed with the joy that I have now in terms of me moving into secularism instead of depending on religion. So the whole idea of moving into secularism and seeing the world differently now, just has shown me that we as human beings are responsible for our conditions. And so from that perspective, it takes on a whole different worldview, attitude, activities, and everything in terms of how we're going to, what kind of world can we create.
That's
So,
right.
and I really see secularism as being more of an answer to a better world than I do religion. So I certainly would like to see the secularists, particularly humanists, or people that call themselves humanists, to take more of an active role in terms of producing a better world. So in terms of the people of color beyond faith, this sort of galvanizes or it tries to help build this community to provide more of a focus on human needs,
Right.
which to me, when I hear social justice, that's what that means. So the idea of taking that now and moving that into this total conversation about secularism has to make things better for us. And it is so disappointing to meet people in the secular community that don't seem to have the interest in social justice. But that's a particular mindset that we have to try to help alter, and the only way you can do that is to have the conversations about it. And so the People of Color Beyond Faith campaign is what we're trying to do with that conversation, so that we can change consciousness and conversation in the secular community first, and then we can take this out a little easier into our communities as we confront the religious people. So I mean, it's such a we have so many issues in our world, in our society. United States is a changing country, and I don't want to sound too negative, but I don't because there are so many things that are deteriorating, and some people see the goodness of it, but I just see too many things that are not good, and only we can change that.
That's true. That's true. Only we can change it, and we're going to have to change it from within. And
Agreed.
I definitely agree with that. And Raina, I guess my question to you is,
I'm so sorry, Mike. I hate Windows 8. It just decided to update. Anyway.
right, but just going on what I had asked Donald about, as far as like what role can we play as humanist atheists of color in this new phase of the civil rights movement that is happening, is being put together. It's not a full-fledged movement yet, but is being built up that way, and that is what I see happening. And basically, that is, as well as social justice, what role can we play in all of this? What advice would you give to the people out there who want to play a part on the positive, the right side of history?
Well, I mean, I think that we all have different strengths, right? And some of us are really good at organizing, and some of us are have other strengths, and I think in this day and age, and the way that the movement's sort of going right now, in terms of the way that it seems like it's about empowering individuals rather than following behind a leader. So I would like to see more people kind of doing what they can where they are. You know what I mean? And if that means like you have, say talent in, organizing something like a community garden or something like that, that's one way. I mean, there's no one way to attack this issue. It's a multi-layered issue. It's an issue of environmental justice and climate change. It's an issue of economics. You know what I mean? It's an issue of education. So there's so many areas right now that we need to push back in. You know what I mean? As people of color, but people and also people who are interested in social justice. There's really no one way to go about it, and I think that was one of the things that I think that I got out of the conference. That there's a lot of work to be done. You know what I mean? And it means kind of viewing things in a more integrated way. We have this tendency to say that, climate change over here has nothing to do with this other thing over here, but climate change is involved in our economics. You know what I mean? It's involved in, employment. You know what I mean? And unemployment, rather. It's involved in all of these things. I mean, it's involved in our university system when we talk about education and things like that, endowments. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. So, we have to think about how things are integrated and where the disparities lie, and how we can maybe go about educating ourselves and trying to, deal with, systematic oppression on all its levels, so.
Exactly. Oh yeah, definitely. And one of the things that, I know that I've been stressing on the show and that I've been talking about as far as what we're seeing with the mass grassroots protests happening across the country is I feel as though we need to focus on issues, on the different issues, and not focus on one particular person or one particular organization. Because as we have experienced through history, when it's focused on one person or one organization and that person is no longer around, people tend to scatter. And as we have seen over the past 50 years, there has not been very much progress at all since the assassination of Martin Luther King. As a matter of fact, you see a lot of these so-called leaders out here, but they're just fattening their wallets and their bellies because, as a matter of fact, me personally, I feel as though the communities of color are in even worse shape than they were in before the last phase of the civil rights movement. Jen, would you like to add on to that?
I didn't hear what you said. I
Oh,
just
that's
got back on.
oh, okay. No worries. We'll go to Donald.
Okay.
Well, I like to add something to that. When we're talking about the civil rights movement in the '60s and being growing up in Alabama during that particular, but I wasn't involved, right? And I think about this a lot. And my little hometown in Alabama, Northwest Alabama, we saw and heard about everything that was taking place, but we weren't involved. And there's a lot of dynamics behind that. But the more I think about it, the more I'm so disappointed that we didn't get involved. But one of the things that I have come to recognize in terms of how do you address issues, and that becomes, first of all, is the issue real, and have you done a good job of recognizing the problem? And so racism still exists in this country, but the challenge is helping people to recognize it. It's not like it was in the 60s or 50s and 60s when Jim Crow was very in your face. You saw it every day. So the racism that we experience now is not like that. And so are not qualified to recognize it, which makes it very difficult, even for people of color, to decide what type of actions to take or whether to take any actions. So to be able to help people to understand racism and how it occurs and what it looks like now, it takes some real strategy and some intelligence to be able to recognize it. But the other side of it too is that once it's recognized, then who's going to want to do something about it? I contend racism can only be eliminated by white people because white people created it. So to be able to get rid of racism, that group has got to be the ones that lead the effort to extinguish racism. Black people have to continue to recognize it and keep it in the forefront when it exists. But to eliminate it, white people have to do it, and that's my opinion. But the civil rights movement now, and it's got to be redefined, obviously. So it'll take on something else, and obviously the more secularists get involved, it's different in terms of will there be the same type of leadership that we experienced in the 50s and 60s? Will there have to be someone appointed as the leader, as Dr. King was assigned? So those are the kind of questions that will probably have to be answered. But I certainly agree with Rainer from the standpoint that we have to recognize problems and get involved where we are, and just be willing to make the sacrifice to do something to make a difference where we are. So, but I am curious about this movement that's taking place because of the police shootings and everything that really was kind of initiated by the event in Ferguson. But I certainly would like to encourage the young people that are involved now to recognize that if they want to emulate or duplicate Dr. King, I would suggest that they make sure the difference between Dr. King and the I Have a Dream King and the Beyond Vietnam King. So, and that King, Dr. King's speech, that's the King I want to emulate. Greater recognition of the issues in this country, other than just racism. And so, the people that are involved in this new movement, I hope they recognize that also.
Right.
Exactly, exactly. And what I've been seeing in this new phase, Black Lives Matter movement that we're embarking on here, is they are addressing intersectionality. I believe quite a few of the people are aware that Dr. King was anti-capitalism, he was anti-poverty, anti-racism, and that his message was more than just focusing on discrimination and racism, because he came to the realization that it was going to take, a massive grassroots movement in order to move things forward. And that is how they came up with the Poor People's Campaign. And that was at the core of it. And Raina, let me see here. Jen's back. Jen, take yourself off mute. There you go,
I'm
Jen.
back.
Okay. So Jen, yeah, Jen. So you see what's happening with the Black Lives Matter movement, and what these young people are out here, protesting about. There's a number of different issues, but Jen, I guess my question to you is, what role do you see us as humanists, as secularists, playing in this movement? And, what would you say to encourage the young people that are out there, protesting?
I'm actually disappointed in the secular movement and how much we aren't out there. I think that I mean we see all kinds of church groups out there and other groups, and we're not really making an impact out there. I mean, and it's deeply disturbing to me. I'm hoping that something like this will spark something, light a fire under us, and more of us will get out there. I mean, I actually protested in Philadelphia, and so many people in the secular community have approached me and said, well, that was a waste of time. What's the point of that? And the point is that we're out there, we're being seen, we're being known, we're telling the world that we're not taking this lying down. We're tired of it. And you can't do that from the back of your, you can't do that sitting at your computer all the time. Sometimes you have to be seen, you have to be known. And you can't do that by ignoring it and expecting injustice to go away. So our role is that the role I think we should take is to actually be out there, to be known, to be seen. As secularists in the fight. No, okay, my camera. Why is that on? So, I mean, that's pretty much where I stand with it. I think we should keep fighting, keep being out there, and I think more of us should be out there and join the fight.
Excellent.
Atheism is not enough.
Exactly. It really, truly isn't enough. And I guess I'll address Raina. Raina, in regards to Black Lives Mattering and the protests and everything that are happening across the country, and the importance of what is transpiring, I guess I would ask you, what are your thoughts on the lack of involvement, the lack of recognition that has been taking place in the secular community? And when I say that, it's just a general statement, because there are people in this community that are out there protesting. There are people in this community who are financially, offsetting some of the expenses. There are many of us that have sent in donations of, money, supplies, so on and so forth, and we make sure that the word gets out. So we're making sure that people are involved in whatever capacity that they can be, because there are some people who cannot physically be out there in the streets protesting, but they know there are other ways in which they can contribute. So what is your take on that?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked. So, okay, so I'm gonna bring up some of the things that I've seen in the community when I talk about this, because as a Black person, I've been very bothered by some of the things I've seen in this community, I must say. And I'm gonna start with that billboard that was in Harrisburg a few years ago from the AA group in Pennsylvania. I forget which one it was. It was one of the Pennsylvania chapters. But they put up this billboard featuring the this quote from the Bible, slaves obey your masters, and to basically go against the year of the Bible, right? And you see this, and then you see a lot of times people in the atheist community, castigating Christians or Black Christians for believing in the Bible and all of this other stuff. And so this is what I have to say to that. You guys are so intent on policing Black people's beliefs, policing their bodies, policing whether or not they pray. But none of you are willing to put yourselves on the line to speak on our bodies being murdered in the street. You can be murdered on film as a Black person in this country and not get justice. Where is the voice for that? Where are the people with the hashtag saying Black Lives Matter? Where are you protesting? I've seen no statements from some of the major atheist and secular organizations, humanist organizations in this community, and it's very disheartening as a Black person to see that. And I think that it's time that some of us face the racism and the white supremacy that exists within this community, because it is really a contradiction, to sit up here and act like you have all of this concern for Black bodies when it comes to church and the issues we face. Oh, I love these white secularists that spend all of their time talking about how the church is not addressing Black problems, and yet they want to do nothing to help alleviate these so-called problems by dealing with racism and white supremacy and all of these institutions, dealing with mass incarceration, dealing with the school-to-prison pipeline, dealing with segregation in STEM fields, things that really hit home in a lot of ways for secular people. It's just really, really disheartening. And then just to even, oh, I'm not even going to get on that other stuff. I'm not going to talk about Dusty. But anyway, we're gonna leave that alone. But my whole thing is that I think that we need to do a better job, of examining the claims that are made in this community. Even things like when you hear atheists talking about Islam, just some of the inherent white supremacy in saying something like, oh, well, Muslims don't have nearly as many Nobel Prizes. It's like, well, where's the Nobel Prize? Who started it? You know what I mean? Who started that? It's not, that's not let's not pretend that there's not some sort of bias in how people get selected for the Nobel Prize. Like, it's just, I don't know. I don't want to even call it oblivious, because I don't think that these people are that oblivious. I don't think that these people who try to make themselves seem like they're so intellectual and so superior are really this oblivious. I think it's time that we examine our beliefs outside of just faith. We have to go deeper.
Exactly, but I can't let the Dusty thing go. And the reason why The reason why I cannot let the Dusty thing go is because you have quite a few atheists of color saying, well, it's just satire and he's not really racist, and you're choosing to be offended. And you have some, atheists, humanists of color out here defending him. You even have some challenging others to a fight, a physical fight offline, in an effort to defend, this guy's honor. You have one particular black atheist or black agnostic or whatever he considers himself, who basically tweeted out the information from Dusty talking about black Christians being Uncle Toms, and said, look, he's saying the same thing I am, and maybe you'll believe him because he's white. And you have a lot of people that have lined themselves up with that white supremacist thought process, but at the same time, when we challenge it, they get upset, they get angry, they deflect. And what's interesting is the same types of deflections that are usually used on us from white people, they turn around and use it on other people of color. So I guess I'll go to Donald for this here. Donald, are you surprised at some of the activities, or the disingenuous intellectual prowess of some of the people in this community? I mean, you have some people out here with the whole alphabet behind their names, but yet they act oblivious to the problems that are prevalent. So the racism, the sexism, the homophobia, the transphobia, and then they turn around and try to make us feel like we are dumb, because you have some of them grasping on to some of those biblical narratives, saying that once they left religion and came to atheism, they were once racist, but they were no longer racist, they were no longer sexist, they were no longer homophobic, because they let go of the religion. Donald, please take this.
Well, I think I was pretty naive moving out of religion myself, thinking that boy, I'm gonna find the best people in the world now. After I did my study and reading about secularism and humanism and all these wonderful people that was promoting this worldview and this new thought process, so I was anticipating moving into a community of just utopia almost. But I was quickly awakening by knowing that, wow, just because you're not in the church doesn't mean that any of that other stuff has changed. But I was a little bit surprised. I mean, I was very much surprised that the conversation is only in certain. It's only directed towards certain things. The anti-religion conversation, the church, separation of church and state, the science in schools. I mean, those are the conversations that dominate the majority of the secularists here in the United States. So, but when you want to talk about these other issues, the conversation is almost mute, and so that is very disappointing. And so I'm not surprised when you see things like that billboard that existed in Harrisburg. It's just no sensitivity. It's a false message. It's rather damaging from the standpoint of why do you need to use that type of language, right? And it can be a little more, a little bit more of a difficulty. Well, let me say it like this: that it's a lot easier to not deal with those personal issues when you have to involve racism and all the other things that are confronted when you talk about social justice. So you avoid taking on those things, because when you look at this country and the way things exist, everything pretty much centers around two different things. capitalism and racism. And so when you combine those two things, then you are encompassing pretty much all of our problems. And then you couple those with religion, and you just got a mess. And that's what we're dealing with in this country. And so which ones do we want to deal with? That's the question. And I think the movement, the majority in the secular movement, would prefer to deal with religion. They don't want to address the problems created by capitalism and racism. So it's easy to attack and to continue this fight on the religious path without talking about those other two. And I think one of the things that takes place is the comfort zone remains when you find those little conversations about the separation of church and state and science and those two things. People aren't that you can't make people uncomfortable when you talk about those, and that's what's been very disappointing to me in terms of the fact that we can't or we won't make any differences in terms of improving lives of people without having the courage to address every issue and see it for what it is.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I would add to that. This community is also loath to deal with its homophobia and sexism issues as well, but but that's another story. But I was just going to say that I did recently have a conversation with someone regarding I think Michael Shermer's new book. We were talking about the moral arc, and his contention is basically that science and reason has basically brought us along, more socially speaking, that we're more moral, that we're more ethical and all of that because of science and reason. And I challenge that because personally, as a person of color, as a woman, I have been interested in looking at history that counters that. This shows that science and reason has had a really big hand in terms of formulating the theory around sexism and race and or women and men and race, and that it's had a really big hand in that. And of course there's things that we're now undoing with science, things that are coming about with evidence, showing that we're more alike than we thought, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I just think that there's this idea in the atheist community that science and reason and is all you need, that you don't need to examine, the conclusions, like we come up with these conclusions, like they come out of thin air, like they don't come filtered through this brain with all of its biases and, and hate and, different feelings, you know what I mean? And it's just pure knowledge, but it's not,
Exactly.
We have to still examine it, and I got someone who literally said to me that the principles that we're talking about in terms of social justice, in terms of freedom and all that sort of thing, they came from white people. Right. He literally said that to me. He was like, oh yeah, well, the principles and things that you're talking about, all of those come from the West. You know what I mean? I was like, so basically you're trying to tell me that black people had to have white people tell them that black people were being oppressed by white people?
Right.
I was like, where is that coming from? I was like, what? I was like, black people have minds. We have human minds. We, these ideas are not, they don't belong to anybody. They're
Exactly.
ideas that we come to because we're human beings and we have brains. But it's the fact that there's so many people in this community who are loath to examine their thinking and before they say stupid things like that, stupid racist things like that really irritates me. It really gets under my skin. But he really thought that what he was saying was just absolute truth. You know what I mean? There would just be no concept of freedom or democracy. There were democratic societies in Africa before colonialization. They weren't necessarily American democracy, but American democracy has only been on the planet for little less than 300 years. You know what I mean? So come on. Think
Right.
about these things. Think these things through. before you say
Exactly.
them.
Exactly, and it's the whole thing is interesting, and we've talked about this before, but yes, you have a number of people out here that fall into those particular mindsets and try to compartmentalize what we're doing, and it basically they're not understanding that many of us, especially many of us of color, our perspective is a little bit different. We didn't grow up with the privilege or the entitlement. So things that they take for granted, these were things that we were fighting for. And you hear a lot of people out here saying that, science and reason and the separation of church and state will make everything better. But the thing is that, and I've stated this before, if a person is hungry, if they are worried about how they're going to have a roof over their heads, how they're going to be clothed, any of these things, they don't care anything about your science and reason. They're trying to figure out how they're going to get some groceries. And they know ABC Baptist missionary up the street gives away groceries every other Friday. So guess who they're going to call? They're going to go to the church, get their groceries, and they're going to come back home and thank God and whoever else and not care about your science and your reasoning. And one other thing we have to talk about in this community that a lot of people don't want to admit to or face is that religious organizations have done more for the separation of church and state than secular organizations. And this is a reality that we're going to have to grasp, and it's a conversation that we're going to have. So I just want to make sure, people understand that you have all these people, yelling at the top of their lungs about the separation of church and state, but yet they don't tell you that the Seventh-day Adventists, the Latter-day Saints, Jehovah's Witnesses, and a number of religious organizations out there thoroughly understand the separation of church and state, agree with it, and bring sensible lawsuits to the forefront to separate church and state. And they've done more than a secular community. I think that needs to be addressed as well. I see Jen has joined us. Jen, do you have anything to add here?
We can talk about separation in church and state, but at the same time, a lot of people that are hungry, need help with their electric bill, they're going to these churches for support. Our community is not doing, science and reason and talking about, the latest podcasts and Dawkins and the latest atheist book isn't keeping people warm at night and isn't feeding people and isn't educating. And at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we all need support. And I think that we as a secular community need to step up and stop skirting these issues.
Exactly, and stop taking a. Oh, go ahead, Raina.
I was going to say we need to deal with our hypocrisy. You know what I mean? I think there's a really great article that Noam Chomsky came out with last week, talking about just, the hypocrisy of the crowd that's shouting, I am Charlie Hebdo. You know what I mean? And, at the same time, we are talking, a lot of us are screaming, I am Charlie Hebdo. No one is saying anything about, the journalists that were killed over the summer in Israel, you know what I mean, and covering Gaza. No one is saying no one's saying about anything about these other issues. It's like it's very, very narrow, and if your humanism is that narrow, I contend it's not humanism. You have to expand your thinking. If either we all matter or none of us matter. You know what I mean? So, and that's not to say the Black lives don't matter. Don't get me on that, okay? Because it's not. We're saying Black lives matter because you guys forget, okay? Of course, all lives matter.
Right, but if all lives mattered, we wouldn't have to say Black lives matters.
Right.
Exactly.
No, all lives matter in theory, but we're saying Black lives matter because you guys forgot. Right.
If our lives mattered in this country, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right.
Exactly, exactly. And so, Donald, it looked like you're trying to get a piece of this conversation here. You want to add some words?
Well, I'm just it's amazing that you have to have the conversation, but we're talking about trying to encourage. I think what we're trying to do is trying to encourage a reality into what humanism is and how do we enact true humanism, and that's the conversation.
Yeah.
So, like Rainer was saying, if you are all lives matter. And
Right.
what we're going to say from a black perspective is that when you do something of justice to black people, we want to remind you that black people lives matter still, not just two, but black people matter, black lives matter. And
Right.
so it's a way in which we want to encourage support and real sincerity in terms of trying to encourage or promote a better life for all of us. So it is a message that we have to continue to talk about.
Right.
Unfortunately, but we got to do it.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And so we're coming up to the last couple of minutes here, and we want to thank all of our panelists. You know, this was an absolutely, exceptional conversation, and there's so much ground that we still have yet to cover. But we wanted to remind you guys that Moving Social Justice will be taking place in Houston, Texas, at Rice University this year. And
Yay!
yeah, in 2016, we will be taking it to the DMV, which is DC, Maryland, Virginia. And in 2017, we will be bringing it to Chicago. Yay! So, just keep in touch. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, People of Color Beyond Faith. You can hear more about this on the Black Free Thinkers podcast,
And
as
Twitter
well as,
chat.
yes, Twitter chat every Thursday evening at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So just to kind of give you an idea, we do engage people on a consistent, continuous basis. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, just look us up. And we have great conversations like this all the time. So again, we thank you for joining us, for viewing this webcast today. We will be having our digital webcast in February next month. We're putting that together now. And thank you, Jen. Thank you, Raina. Thank you, Donald, for joining us today. We would like to thank Free Thought Blogs and Dr. Carrier here for having us
Thank you.
as part of their program. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. This has been great.
Adios. Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to say that, right? Ooh, God.